Hi, I'm George Nichols, President and CEO of the American College of Financial Services. I am here with two impressive alumni of the American College, but who are also ambassadors for our FinServe Network to talk about DAFs, Donor Advised Funds. I have with me today, I have Rick Peck, who is known as the philanthropy guy, who's going to talk to us about the philanthropy and DAFs as it relates to both an advisor and someone who teaches in this space. And I also have Mary Fischer-Nassib, who is the president and co-founder of So Good Now, which is a sports philanthropy nonprofit. So thank you both for being with me here today. And in order to get started, what I'd like to ask, and I'll start with you, Rick, is, okay, everybody's like, I heard about these donor advised funds, I heard about these DAFs. What are they?
So I like to sort of start the conversation and talk about charitable giving as a number of choices people have. So for example, people give out of their checkbook. So I start with checkbook giving as one option. Then I also talk about donor advised funds, and usually those are through a commercial donor advised fund, or it could be a community foundation, or it could be a single issue sponsor. And then I also talk about private foundations. So it's just setting the stage for these are the different ways that people can give. Donor advised funds are definitely an impressive and up and coming and very much thriving way that people can make donations and make impact in the world.
We had a conference probably about 2 years ago, and I remember speaking with a donor advised fund executive, and I was amazed at how really easy it is for someone to actually get a donor advised fund program for this. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. The thresholds are very low. For example, just using Fidelity as an example, they used to have a $5,000 threshold, and now it's zero. So people can go online and just set it up on their own for very little. And yet thresholds in general are not very much. And people can give to other people's donor advised funds. So even if they don't want to set up their own, they can go on and set up by adding to, or not set up, but add to someone else's donor advised funds. So it's very easy. The costs are generally fairly low. There's a lot of different investment choices people can have. And I call it decoupling from actually making a gift directly to charity. You're making a decision to put it into a charitable giving vehicle like a DAF, but then later you can decide, all right, I think I'm going to make a grant now in December to my favorite 1, 2, 3, or 15 different charities. So it's very easy to use.
So we're going to make our gift from your DAF that you just explained over to Mary regarding the So Good Now. So you received DAFs, I think, tell us about your experience with them, how you engage with them, and then sort of, if you don't mind, an example of how nonprofits could think about leveraging and being a part of a DAF community.
Absolutely. So my organization is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and about 30% of our gifts are from donor advised funds.
Okay.
So, what does that look like? It means that it comes from an institution. If someone were to look at the three of us here, and they would say, which one of those people has a donor advised fund? Hopefully it's all of us, right? Because that's how easy they are to use now. But as a nonprofit leader, we have to develop that side of understanding DAFs. Not only do we have to develop it in understanding it for our organization and the growth of our organization, only like 15% of nonprofits have the capacity to accept non-cash assets through a donor advised fund. But the majority of assets, as we all know, are non-cash.
Right.
So if we're going to grow our nonprofit, we need to get educated and comfortable and confident on what a DAF is, why a DAF is good, how to use it, and how to educate our donors, our board members, our this and our that, because they're growing in popularity, and we want to be the first ones using them. So from a leadership standpoint, I'm thrilled about the potential of getting more assets from DAF. But our organization also is a youth philanthropy organization. So not only do we learn it, but we teach young people how to use DAFs too. Just like you said in opening, it's very easy now. So why do we teach young people to use them? So that they'll have years of experience by the time they hit their stride in their careers and in their earning capacity.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I will admit I probably heard of DAFs maybe 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I've been in the workforce. I've invested. I've given a lot of money from a philanthropic perspective. No one ever talked to me about a DAF. My wife and I would sit down. We'd go through our little list. We'd have a little family meeting. We'd write our check, and that was it. And then yet the efficiencies and the benefits of a DAF, I just was not aware of it about 10 years. Fortunately, I did know about it before I took the job. So I sort of feel better there.
Yeah.
But now you mentioned something, though, that I think is real important for people to make sure they grasp. And that is, well, we're talking about, I write a check to my favorite nonprofit. But you mentioned non-cash assets. Rick, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as Mary said, ironically, a lot of nonprofits ask for cash, even though it's one of the smallest asset classes that people have. Non-cash, on the other hand, starting with retirement plans or real estate, which is about 40% of people's assets, real estate alone. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, life insurance cash value, tangible personal property, and all kinds of other things. There's just all these assets that people have that are not being considered. And to Mary's point, a lot of the nonprofits are not comfortable taking them in because it's complicated, it's not as easy as cash. But really, if they get comfortable with it or find outside partners that they can use to help third parties to help them close these gifts and then wire the net proceeds over to the nonprofits, that would be great. Or take the assets and put them into donor advised funds. You're capturing a lot of wealth out there that might not otherwise be allocated to charitable giving.
The most important thing you said, though, is that there are people like you and others who nonprofits can go to when they get these non-cash assets that can help them determine the best way for them to be used for the benefit of the nonprofit.
Exactly.
And so that's pretty exciting. So making sure people know that you're not out there by yourself, and for those nonprofits that may not have that knowledge, it's nice that they get to hear you and find out that there are people like Rick that are out there that can help them in that process.
I agree, right? But we have to think about DAFs as a tool that can be used in a lot of different professions, right? And one of the things that we talk about at the college is, how do we build teams? How do we build teams so that our consumers are able to maximize their greatest impact, their greatest well-being, and we're responsible for that. So the DAF can be used by a wealth manager as long as he knows the conversation. The DAF can be used by an estate attorney. The DAF can be used by the nonprofit. The DAF can be used by the donor. So it's a very unifying tool.
Yes.
And that's what I love about it, right? However, there's a learning curve, right? There is a learning curve. And what you use a DAF for and what I use a DAF for and what he uses a DAF for may be completely different. But the fact that everybody knows what a DAF is step one. So I don't like the name Donor Advised Fund. It's very clunky. So I say it's the opposite of a fad. Donor Advised Funds are here to stay, right? DAF is DAF, FAD is FAD. It is the opposite of a fad. So this is a very effective, efficient, and powerful tool in advancing philanthropy. So I think the more that people can educate themselves about it, the better off their nonprofits are going to be, the better off their own personal philanthropy is going to be, the better received a wealth manager is going to be, all that.
I love a couple of things here. One is the reference to it's a unifying opportunity here, because one of the things that the college is looking at is, how can the college serve as a platform or convener to bring more and more of unification of the system, the ecosystem of philanthropy? And it's all the parts, but it's all these specialties, and get them together to make sure that we are maximizing the impact that philanthropy can have across the country. So that's the first. I really was impressed with the DAF and the FAD thing too. I just want you to know.
You heard it here first.
Okay, that means I'm going to have to give you credit when I say
yes,
it.
You
But
do.
that's okay. That was great.
You heard it here first.
I love that. But so we've had this little discussion about what they are and how we benefit from them. And everyone, this is one of the fastest growing areas within the philanthropic space. But they're not, without controversy. There are issues that the government and the IRS have related to, George is writing the check or whatever it is. He's got his DAF. He's getting the tax benefit of that, but that money's sitting there and it's not being distributed out, which is what they want it to be. And how we get around that. So, Rick, if you can touch a little bit on some of the criticism in your perspective and how we address those as we go forward.
Yeah. So I'd say you touched on it already. The idea that donor advised funds are not distributing as much as they should. That it's used as a hoarding vehicle. People are putting assets in, possibly getting a charitable income tax deduction, and then not actually distributing anything out for the good of the community. But one thing that I don't think is said enough is that every single year, over 20% is distributed from donor advised funds into the community. Now, there are people that don't distribute money from the donor advised funds, and on the other side, there are people that distribute 100% from their donor advised funds. It's almost like a pass-through. But that should be stated. In contrast, private foundations distribute on average about 6%. And donor advised funds have about almost, encroaching $300 billion. Private foundations have $1.3 trillion. So I just want to state that it's comparing those against each other, there's that. And also there's the idea now with the proposed DAF regulations is what is the role of an advisor? Before, it seemed like there was a brighter line where you have a donor who sets up a donor advised fund and they make distributions from the donor advised funds. They're advising on that. And the advisor either would just be on the sidelines pitching the idea of a donor advised fund to them because it made sense for their situation, or they would even be managing the asset itself. What's being invested within the donor advised fund, it would be under their purview. Now it's being a little bit more blurry. Is the advisor now part of what the donor's trying to do in distributions? That's where the DAF regulations are going. Is it's not as clean and clear anymore. So there's that. And then the idea of distributions. Now distributions might be able to go toward vendors. That wasn't necessarily the case before, so that's making it a little bit more confusing. So I think while the spirit of trying to put guardrails on things and definitions on things feels right, especially as they're growing, it also can start to feel more confusing depending on how things land. And again, these proposed DAF regulations are not, they're just proposed, but that's something that I think about is the clarity. If people already are not clear about the value of a donor advised fund, and then you add a few more things to make it cloudy, right, it could create the opposite effect, which is instead of saying, look what we've done to create some parameters and regulations on DAFs, now you've actually turned people off of them. People who should be considering them now are saying, well, I don't want to do that because it seems confusing and my advisor's kind of frowning upon it and it's getting a little messy. And so I think it could have an unintended consequence.
That's very, very helpful. So now, Mary, let's go to the other side of that. And what I'd love for you to share is like your experience as you receive those things that you may think, it could be a little better here, a little better there, or even the perspective of other people in the nonprofit space, their opinions and views of both using them or benefiting from them or the challenges they see.
So as a nonprofit leader, part of my job is to fundraise, and we apply for grants. And there's far too many emails that say, I'm so sorry, we only had X amount of money to give out, and we had 10 times the amount of that in a request. So all of us know we have enough resources to help those who don't. It's just a matter of getting them there. So if this is a pervasive problem where people are seeking funding and they can't get it through traditional sources and these DAFs are rising, the college has to do a good job in educating people why DAFs are good, how they're similar, what they can be used for. As a nonprofit, I'm looking for large gifts that are multi-year. Okay? Now you only sell your business once. So you put that money in a donor advised fund and you say, she's doing good things. I'm gonna say, I'll give you a multi-year gift from my DAF, I'm thinking through how I'm going to support this organization. So what'd that give you? It gave you muscle, right? It gave you muscle as a donor. And it gave you support for not only my nonprofit, but now you're gonna start thinking about other things that your family cares about, and you're going to start investigating. So I think that nonprofit leaders who are interested in understanding how DAFs can benefit them should start looking at donor-centric giving, right? What kind of people do they know that are managing multiple causes? You said real estate, right? So just introducing the conversation. It may take you 10 years to actually get to where you're going, but if you don't introduce that conversation, then you're never going to get there. So we have to look for long-term solutions, I think, and collective solutions as well.
And one of the things that the college is doing related to donor advised funds is, if you think about, we are very focused in our history on applied financial knowledge, and we offer the CAP, the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy designation, which I'm honored to be one of. And so we were approached by a number of folks in the space around, could the college offer a donor advised fund certificate? And it really is like, let's set a baseline, a standard for everyone that's involved in the space. And we are fortunate that Rick and some of his colleagues are helping lead us in that effort of the development of the certificate. The college will be offering a donor advised fund certificate program in Dallas in April of 2025. So we're very excited about that. But when we think about who we'd like to be there to make sure they have the basic understanding and then address some of the issues, and this is really just a beginning step in that process. There'll be nonprofits there that we expect. There will be donor advised fund companies and firms and programs that are there. And one of the things that I think you mentioned is even the understanding that there are different players in there. There's the big companies, and there's community foundations, there's a single DAF. So all of that knowledge, we're trying to begin to make it available as an applied knowledge certificate offered by the college that will be ongoing, that to sort of help in this process, recognizing again the growth, the phenomenal growth, but more importantly, the phenomenal impact that it could actually have. And that's what we're really excited about.
Yeah.
And we should be excited about it. There are rules, right? I mean, there are rules to using these. We don't want to paint them like that's be all, end all, but the more you know, the more you can do. So I think this is a step in the right direction.
We're excited.
Yeah, it's so true. I think education is key. There's a lot of misconceptions again today. I think this certificate program is long overdue. It's very comprehensive. It's meticulously designed. It's sequential, starting with the basics and the landscape, and then moving into investments and ethics and impact and what that all looks like. And just kind of a soup to nuts overview is, I think, going to be incredible. And it doesn't exist right now. Ironically, with as many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in DAFs, there's no sort of comprehensive training program that exists. So it's exciting.
And now you'll see why we have Rick and his colleagues helping us build this, because part of the thing that we think is important as we do this, and this is why the two of you are here with us, is that where we are this platform that provides applied financial knowledge. The reason for that is our great faculty, but also the fact of the partnerships that we have with such bright individuals who are leaders and have the knowledge that can help make what we do really applied in what it is today, and that's exciting. There's a question before we wrap up. There's a question I'd like to ask both of you, and it's one of those things that I think a lot about, as both from a professional standpoint as the president of the college, but also from a personal perspective. We think of philanthropy for just rich people. It's just the wealthy that are giving, but that's really not true. And so I'd love to get your perspective of what you, from your lens, see the people that make up philanthropy, and how we can do a better job of promoting all of the things that all Americans are doing to support the philanthropic efforts of so many organizations. I don't know who wants to go first, but you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think about the Giving USA report talking about, I think it's $557 billion that were donated in the United States recently, in most recent report. That's a lot. That's collective, the whole United States, not just the rich people. And I think that's important. The number one category to give is religion. So I'm thinking of tithing and the fact that people are giving a lot of money away in that way. But I also think, as you're saying that, about the different ways that people can give, treasure being one of them. So there's something called the 6 T's, right? So treasure being one of them, giving money away. But people give their time as volunteers. They give their talents as board members. They give their ties, which is I'm a good connector. I can bring people together. I give my testimony because I'm a fan of this place and I want to make sure it's promoted well. And I give my personal truth. So those are all the 6 T's. And so I just think of, I mention that because it's all important. And then giving money away through DAFs and other means is important. And Mary and I were talking before around teaching kids about something really small. If you make $5, maybe you give some of it away and you keep some of it for yourself and spend it on something fun, and then you save the rest of it for a rainy day for the future. And teaching that can be done at any level, at any age. It is something that we all should be doing collectively.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think collectively is the operative word here. And proximity is another word that I use. I think traditional philanthropy is distant philanthropy and it's top-down philanthropy. And what we teach is more of a trust-based philanthropy. What does that look like? It looks like I believe in you, right? Yep. I believe in you. And a lot of these underserved communities, they don't have people believing in them. They have people who say, I'm gonna fix this problem for you, and this is what we're gonna decide, and then you'll get these gifts from us because we know what we're doing. But collectively, it would be in our proximate area, in our community, with the people who live and breathe and walk and work there every day, to be able to raise them as philanthropists. So if we were to be able to take some of these gifts and say to communities, we believe in you, we have this cool vehicle, a donor advised fund, which is now can be used, we can make we've opened, I don't know, 10 community funds already where they can do their own fundraiser, put money in, kids, parents, grandparents, all different faiths, all different races, all different, professions, put it all in the same thing, and together they'll decide this year this person's mom has MS and this is what we're going to support, or this person in our community, had this happen to them and we're going to support that, or we have a prevalence of diabetes in our community and we want to get behind it. But that's the power. That's the power of the future. And Rick asked me earlier, well, what do you see as the vision? What do you see as the movement that's happening? And do you know what a scatter map is? Mm-hmm. It's like a blood spat, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to see a map of the United States that every time we do community-centric philanthropy and we're making gifts, that those dots are starting to just be brighter and brighter and brighter, and then we'll be able to map it over the course of time. So that's my vision for philanthropy in the future.
I love it. I love the response of both of you. And I'm going to use the wrong word, and I always get in trouble. I won't say who always tells me I'm in trouble when I say this word, but
I like when you're in trouble.
When I think about my personal life and I think about the giving and this debate of there's the wealthy, and we only sometimes hear about the wealthy. We don't hear about what's going on at the local community. That we all did get together and we're going to help someone there. I was involved in a church program, and it was so important that we communicated to everyone in the church that it wasn't the size of the gift, it was the commitment of the heart. Mm-hmm. And that we wanted that part of it, your commitment, to be equal. That it is just as important for you to make a difference, whether it's $1 or $100. Mm-hmm. But that's where that commitment is. And that's what I hear from both of you is, how do we facilitate that happening so that there's a recognition that those who are committed to giving, there's a recognition that they give. Mm-hmm. And we're not evaluating on the dollar amount or the asset that they transfer, it's the impact that is really happening in the community. And when I think about the mission of the college, it's how do we benefit society?
For sure.
I want to thank the two of you, Mary, Rick, for being here, for your ongoing partnership, for one, being FinServe ambassadors, being alumni, being big supporters of the college, and being experts that are willing to bring your expertise back and let us share it with the broader community of the college community. So
Thank you,
very
George.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
George.
Expand your opportunities at theamericancollege.edu.